never expected betrayal to arrive so quietly. It was Wednesday morning when I walked into Brightline's Innovation Lab, expecting the usual hum of keyboards and low chatter. Instead, I felt cold stares. "Madison, can you come to Victor's office?" Marjorie called from the hall, her voice tight. Pause. Something in the air told me this wasn't ordinary. Victor, my manager of 10 years, sat behind his massive oak desk, his expression unreadable. "We need to discuss your position here," he said, leaning forward. I sensed the words coming. They planned to push me out quietly. My pulse quickened, but I kept calm. I had prepared for this. Over the past month, I had documented every project detail, every improvement I had made to the CoreTrack system. Nothing was left undocumented. Victor thought he could remove me unnoticed, but I had my own plans. I smiled slightly and said, "Of course. Let's go over the details." The quiet office felt tense, like a storm waiting to break. I knew the battle was just beginning. Victor tried to make it subtle, but I saw through it immediately. "We're considering restructuring the innovation team," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Your role may no longer fit our current direction." I nodded politely, masking the alarm rising in my chest. I had seen this tactic before, pushing someone out while pretending it was for their benefit. He listed minor complaints about timelines and meetings, all trivial. "We value your contributions," he said, "but we might need someone with a fresh perspective." I held my tongue. The truth was, the fresh perspective they wanted was someone who could take credit for my work. I returned to my desk, heart pounding, and opened my secured files. Every improvement, every idea, every prototype was carefully documented. I began drafting a report that would expose Victor's plan. If they thought they could quietly erase me, they were wrong. I smiled at the irony. That evening, I met Gregory Sullivan at Meridian, a quiet, upscale restaurant far from Brightline's headquarters. Greg was the CEO of Silvertech, our main competitor. He understood discretion. A private alcove kept us out of sight of other diners. "They actually did it?" Greg asked, shaking his head. "To push out the very person who created their core tech." I nodded, sipping water. Victor never understood the real system architecture. He saw the interface, the marketing, the presentation. That was it. 3 months earlier, I had discovered Brightline never filed a patent for my CoreTrack improvements. They claimed oversight when I asked, but something felt wrong. Checking internal docs revealed plans to take credit for my work, push me out, and claim everything as company property. Greg slid a folder across the table. "All set. Silvertech will license your patent. Signing bonus, equity, royalties. Everything's ready." Smiled. The future was mine. I went home that night thinking about my team. They had been loyal, working long hours, trusting me. Greg assured me there were senior roles waiting for all 6 of them. I felt a quiet pride knowing they'd be protected. Friday arrived in a blur. I attended exit interviews, transferred knowledge, and documented every process. Every password, every workflow was meticulously recorded. This wasn't generosity. It was evidence. Brightline would soon see how indispensable I had been. I smiled at the irony. Point 5. Denise from HR went through the standard checklist. "Anything developed during employment remains company property," she said, sliding a non-disclosure agreement across the table. I nodded pleasantly. "Of course. Anything done with company resources during company time is theirs. My improvements were done on my own equipment, on my own time." Denise barely looked up. "They didn't know the patent was mine." My desk, I carefully placed my small award for CoreTrack between layers of tissue. Marjorie Thompson lingered at my door. "Everything clear for your departure?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Crystal clear," I replied. I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. What could a 38-year-old woman possibly do after 15 years in the company? Monday morning came. I dressed in a charcoal power suit. Silvertech's town car arrived at 7:30 a.m. The press release was live at 7 a.m., announcing me as Chief Innovation Officer and the sole inventor of the patented algorithm. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed my new corner office. Industry newsletters were already buzzing. Precision, timing, execution. My phone lit up with texts from my former team. Complete chaos here. What did you do? Miguel, my lead developer, wrote first. I smiled, replying, check your email. Offers waiting for all 6 of you. Meanwhile, at Brightline, the executives were panicking. Servers from the research division were rushed to their tech team for analysis. Victor paced, demanding explanations. By 10:45 a.m., Victor emailed me directly. There appears to be a misunderstanding. Call me. I forwarded the message to Silvertech's legal team without replying. By noon, analysts and journalists were buzzing. Brightline stock dropped 7%, Silvertech rose 12%. The first licensing inquiry arrived, not from Brightline, but from Dataflow Systems, worried about being caught in the crossfire. By 3:30 p.m., Miguel sent a detailed report of Victor's all-hands meeting. The CEO had tried to appear confident, but employees were anxious. Many updated LinkedIn profiles immediately. Marjorie looked like she might faint when someone asked if they had failed to secure the patent. I settled into Silvertech with ease. The respect I received was a stark contrast to Brightline. Meetings were productive. People listened. My age and experience were assets, not liabilities. Greg informed me early testing showed a 51% performance boost from my refinements. More than expected. I had kept my best improvements for myself. By Friday, Brightline stock had fallen 23% from Monday. Investors called, analysts wrote articles. Can Brightline survive the algorithm crisis? The pressure on Victor was immense. Silvertech's legal team received the first inquiries from Brightline lawyers, asking to discuss licensing terms. We responded with strategically high rates and a public acknowledgement of my work. Victor's ego would struggle to swallow that. Monday, 10 days after leaving Brightline, I led the first meeting with my new team. Miguel and the other 5 engineers joined. The energy was electric. This is how development meetings should feel, Anita, one of my former team members, said. At Brightline, we spent half our time explaining basics to executives who wouldn't listen. My assistant interrupted. Dr. Madison, there's been a major development. Brightline's board announced an emergency leadership change. Victor is stepping down effective immediately. Marjorie and the head of legal were also out. Richard Donovan, the new interim CEO, emailed me. Unlike Victor, he was respectful. We want to discuss fair licensing and acknowledge your contributions. I forwarded it to Greg with one note. Phase 1 complete. 3 months after my departure, I was delivering the keynote at the National Technology Innovation Conference. Industry leaders, journalists, and young developers filled the room. The conference organizer introduced me. Dr. Madison, Chief Innovation Officer at Silvertech, creator of the distributed processing algorithm revolutionizing data handling. Applause washed over me. I reflected on the past year. Last year I sat in the back while Victor presented. Now I was at the podium, respected, recognized, and fully credited. I shared the story of innovation ownership and the importance of documentation. I didn't name Brightline, but my message was clear. Innovators must be valued. Afterward, several young women approached me for mentorship. Your story changed how I document my work, one said. I now keep detailed logs on personal time. Smart, I replied. Your work deserves protection. I felt a quiet pride knowing I had inspired others. That evening, news broke. Brightline finally acknowledged the licensing agreement with Silvertech, naming me as the algorithm's creator. Their stock stabilized, though at a lower value. My strategy had worked perfectly. A year after being told to clean my desk, I sat in my office at Silvertech, reviewing quarterly reports. Under my leadership, we had launched 3 new products based on my algorithm, capturing significant market share. Greg entered with champagne. Happy anniversary, he said. He handed me glasses. The board wanted you to hear this first. Silvertech has surpassed Brightline in market value for the first time. I smiled, feeling quiet satisfaction. Recognition, not revenge, was the goal. My assistant delivered a sleek envelope, an invitation to speak at Women in Technology's annual leadership summit. Topic: Owning your intellectual value. My story had become a cautionary tale in corporate boardrooms. Richard Donovan implemented changes at Brightline based on my Silvertech policies. Intellectual property protection, inventor recognition, and respect for innovation. They learned the hard way. I raised my glass in a toast. It was never about revenge, I said. It was about showing the industry that innovation comes from real people who deserve credit. Greg clinked glasses. Sunlight streamed through my office. I reflected on the journey. At 39, I had finally found what eluded me for years: success, respect, and acknowledgement. My name was permanently attached to the algorithm that had changed an industry. Exactly where it belonged.